Welcome to the Rehabilitation Research and Training Center on Vocational Rehabilitation Practices and Youth online seminar series. The center conducts research and provides trainings and technical assistance which investigate problems, craft solutions, and design actionable strategies for translating research into usable, feasible, and effective strategies for transitioning stakeholders, which include VR agencies, policymakers, researchers, transitioning youth and their family, educators, practitioners, and employers. Our online seminars are designed to provide VR counselors and other youth employment stakeholders with short training lessons on a wide variety of topics related to VR practices and youth outcomes. Each seminar is conducted by well-respected content experts. Once you've watched the online seminar, you have the opportunity to take a quiz to show what you've learned. A link to the quiz will appear once the seminar video is completed. If you score 70% or higher on the quiz, you'll be emailed a certificate of completion for your records. If your score is below 70%, you'll have one additional chance to re-watch the seminar and take the quiz. Check out our website at www.vrpracticesandyouth.org and check it out frequently for new seminars, publications, free webinars on topics related to providing effective vocational rehabilitation services to youth and young adults, or to contact us directly with questions. The Rehabilitation Research and Training Center on Vocational Rehabilitation Practices and Youth is funded by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Administration on Community Living. Now, on to the seminar.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sean Roy, and I am with Transcend and the Rehabilitation Research and Training Center on VR Practices in Youth. I'd like to welcome you to this online seminar where today we're going to focus on the family role in career planning and preparation for youth with disabilities. Today's learning objectives are on the slide as follows. We'd like you to understand the benefits of partnering with families and caregivers in the employment process for youth with disabilities. And for this particular seminar, when we talk about families and caregivers, we really are talking about anybody that acts in that role for a youth with disabilities. We'd like you to help you identify strategies to actively involve families in the career planning process. We want to help you identify aspects of career planning and employment process that families and caregivers need to be aware of as they help their youth. And we want to give you some ideas to help you build effective partnerships with families. This particular seminar is intended for vocational rehabilitation professionals, education professionals, and families to really give you some ideas on how you can help families understand what their role is in the process and how you can help coach them in that role. When we talk about working with families, we really need to start with the idea of high expectations. Research shows us that families who have high expectations of their youth with disabilities really have youth that have better outcomes in employment and accessing post-secondary education. So we need to help families see that employment is possible for all types of people with disabilities. That is really your messaging. But we also need to help professionals believe the same thing and convey those positive messages. Well, it's not always easy in our service systems that are focused on identifying deficits and helping to mitigate those deficits. A lot of times families get negative messages about their youth with disabilities. This is what they can't do. This is what they'll never be able to do. So it really is a shift in thinking and helping families understand that employment is possible, and having high expectations is very much a key for youth success. Another important aspect of family involvement in the career planning process is helping youth understand their disability. Many youth and young adults do not know what their disability is or how it impacts them in employment, learning, or social situations. A lot of families have never had this conversation with their youth. And what happens then is youth with disabilities go into the world not knowing exactly what their strengths and needs are, and really not having much of an idea of what their accommodation needs are. So families should be encouraged to have this conversation with their youth. And if it's easier, they can have this conversation really focused on the idea of work. Families should set the high expectation that work is not only possible, but it is expected. Yes, you may have a disability. Let me help you understand what that disability is. There are ways that we can accommodate that disability, but the expectation is that you are going to work. You know, I find in my work that parents want to help in the process of helping young people transition from school to community, and in that helping them prepare for and gain employment. They want to help, but they often don't know what is needed from them. Some families may think that school professionals and employment professionals are the experts, and they just need to get out of the way. We know that family involvement does tend to drop off in the middle school and high school years. And so I think it's important that we really give families a clear idea about how they can be partners in the process. If we don't tell families what we need from them, then it's hard for us to expect them to know how they can participate. So there's a lot of ways for families to be involved, and we're going to talk about some of them during the course of this seminar. But here are some ideas specifically and how parents can be partners in certain ways. Certainly, we know that there are transportation challenges in a lot of our communities, and helping our young people with disabilities get to work experiences and jobs. Some of our young people don't drive. Some of our young people need accessible transportation. And this is a problem that parents can really help brainstorm. They might be able to help organize friends and family or other sources to provide transportation or augment existing transportation resources. Sometimes there are challenges when it comes to young people on the job or finding a job, and families know their children better than anybody else, so they can help brainstorm specific employment challenges. You know, for example, you know, why does a young person act a certain way in a certain environment? Family might be able to say, for example, yes, that young person doesn't like loud noises. The young person doesn't like crowds. The young person might be sensitive to light and smells. These are things this is information that families can provide and help brainstorm ways around those challenges. We know that there's a lot of paperwork involved in employment services for voc rehab and community rehab providers. And it's really important that families understand the importance of signing the paperwork and being, you know, cognizant of the process. Quite often I hear frustration from VR professionals that families won't sign the paperwork, and it really stalls the process. And it may seem like a simple expectation, but you just have to communicate very clearly with families that this is an important part of the process. Families should be accessed to provide information for assessments, either employment readiness assessments or transition assessments for youth with disabilities. It's one thing to gather information through a file review or observing a young person in a workplace, but you'll get a richer base of information if you can sit down and interview the family, and they can tell you what they believe some of the strengths and challenges are. It really provides you with more of a well-rounded set of information. And families really need to know that it's an expectation that they can provide that information to you. And most importantly, it is reinforcing the expectations of employment at home. We can help families understand that the messaging that they give young people while they're at home really reinforce what young people hear from employment professionals and education professionals. So it is extremely important that work be an expectation that gets reinforced while young people are at the home. If they hear it from their parents, they're more likely to buy into those expectations. Students who receive special education services in the schools have an individualized education program, or an IEP. During the transition years, that IEP should contain activities and specific goals around employment and post-secondary education or additional training after high school, and living independently in the community. But what we find is that many IEPs tend to be weak in employment goals, especially for young people with significant disabilities. For example, transitioning into a day program is not an employment goal on the IEP. The IEP goals should have specific activities to help young people identify their needs and work on certain areas so they can be prepared for employment. And families play a very important role in advocating for what is on the individualized education program. Families are part of the IEP team, and they are a strong voice, and they do get listened to, but oftentimes they just don't know what to ask for. They may not recognize that an IEP goal is weak, or that a certain assessment isn't necessarily appropriate for their young person. So it is also crucial that families provide information so that appropriate transition and career readiness assessments can be applied to help the youth really address the need areas that they have. A lot of employment and transition assessments are relatively standard and may not really get at what the young person's needs are. And that is a frustration after the fact, because then families don't always understand why certain things aren't being worked on. So parent training and information centers around the country are a wonderful resource to work with families to be able to help them understand what constitutes a strong IEP and how to integrate effective, strong work-related goals into the IEP. We know that quality work experiences is one of the greatest predictors to employment success for all youth. Youth need to be able to practice working so they can become more qualified and effective employees as adults. But in this day and age, it's getting harder and harder to provide young people with quality work experiences. The reasons for this varies, but the point remains that families need to be aware that obtaining quality work experiences is the main goal. If they can help identify opportunities for young people to practice work, to engage in job shadowing, to engage in an information interview, they are really helping their young person along the way towards employment success as an adult. So families can advocate and make sure that strong work experiences are featured in the IEP, and multiple work experiences in multiple environments. And families can also facilitate volunteer experiences and information interviews as well. I often tell families in the presentations that I do that work experiences do not have to be long, drawn-out things. They can be, for example, one-day volunteer opportunities to help a young person see what it's like maybe working in a food bank, or what it's like working in a career area that they might be interested in. We're also going to talk about using personal networks to get those work experiences. But if I had to tell families one thing to focus on during the transition years, I would say it would be work to be able to get those work experiences for your youth, because it's going to pay off in the end. So a lot of families, again, don't necessarily understand the process of career planning. They think, maybe somebody, because your young person has a disability, maybe somebody's job it is to come in and help their youth get a job, or maybe employers are supposed to give their youth a job because they have a disability. But really, for youth with disabilities, the career planning process is the same for anybody else. And I love this quote from Abraham Lincoln, which says, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I will spend the first 4 hours sharpening the axe." And what that tells me is that preparation is really the most important thing. We don't jump right into jobs. A lot of times, if we do jump right into jobs, things are not successful because we have not done the preparation before to be able to arm young people with the skills they need and the accommodations they might need in the workplace. So when I talk about career planning with families, I often talk about it as a 3-stage process. To explore, to prepare, and to act. To explore is to help young people really understand themselves and to understand what types of jobs they might be interested in a very broad fashion. You don't have to get too specific, but just say, would you like to work inside or outside? Would you like to work in an office, or would you rather work in a job where you work with your hands? Do you want to work in a quiet environment, or would you rather work in a place with a lot of action? And really, career assessments can do this. Life experiences can help young people get some idea of what they might want to do. And then you move on to the prepare stage, where you help families say, okay, we need to, if a young person, for example, picks that they want to work with animals, what are some of the work experiences and career readiness activities that we can do to help them truly understand what jobs are in that field and what it takes to be able to get those jobs. I find a lot of families and young people don't completely understand the level of training and education that's needed to do a lot of jobs. And that's a great role for the education and VR professionals to help families understand that post-secondary education or additional training is often needed for a lot of jobs. So you prepare for, okay, here's what this job entails, here's what the education is required, and how do we get that young person to that particular point. And then to act on it, which is really to secure the necessary supports for the young person to be able to get the job, to get the training that is necessary, and to really get them into work experiences where they can try it out for themselves and say, yeah, this might be something that that I really, really enjoy doing. If you break down the career planning process in this particular way, it might be easier for families to understand the stages and to understand the role that they play within those stages. We talked a little bit about using personal networks, and families are, everybody has a personal network. Everybody has people that they work with, people that they are in communities with, people that they might golf with or have book club with. They have neighbors, businesses you frequent, friends, family. This is your personal network. And if you're looking for work experiences for a young person, it's important that families know that they have this vast resource that they can tap into to be able to help VR professionals and employment professionals find work experiences that their young people might be interested in. Again, let's go back to the animal example. Let's say a young person is interested in some profession where they get to work with animals. Well, you would encourage families then to say, do you have anybody who works with animals in your personal network? Does your family have pets? Do those pets visit a vet? Would you be willing to go talk to that veterinarian to say, hey, my son is interested in this, can he job shadow you for half a day and see what it's really like to be a veterinarian and a vet tech. Let's say that your son or daughter wants to be a landscaper and work outside. You know, you can use your personal network to see if there's any opportunities there. We know that it's much easier to access these work experiences if you have a personal relationship rather than trying to find them cold. And families can play a very important role by using their personal networks to be able to help their youth and the professionals working with them find these work experiences. I also find that a lot of families don't think, they think personal networks are something a bit more formal, and they're really not. Personal networks are informal, and everybody has a group of people around them that they can access. Now, we know that youth with disabilities need to prepare to be employees and offer employers, you know, a good service. There's no employers out there whose job it is to hire people with disabilities. Employers need employees to do the jobs that they need done, right? So families, looking at it through that lens, families can play a role in preparing their young people to meet the needs of employers. So in talking with a lot of employers over the years, they're willing to hire youth, including youth with disabilities, absolutely. But what they are looking for are young people that have certain traits, including honesty, reliability, of course. Are they going to show up for their shift? But most important that I have found employers want out of young people is a young person with a great attitude towards working, a young person that comes in and expresses that they want to work, they're excited about working, they're willing to learn new things, and they want to work hard. These are traits and expectations that families can help young people establish. Families can nurture these traits and skills that employers are looking for. And families can also help spot specific needs in employers and be able to gain work experience. Section of the store often needs arranging. I think that my son could come in and do that. Employers have specific needs, and oftentimes we can't tell what those needs are just by walking in and looking. But if you frequent a business and you understand what they're going for, you might notice things in ways that your son or daughter or a son or daughter might be able to come in and help out. So it's important that families understand that we are really preparing young people to meet the needs of what employers are looking for. One of the things that employers find most important is employees who have certain soft skills. Soft skills are the interpersonal skills that everybody uses to get by in daily life. And having effective soft skills will help youth and young adults really get a leg up in the employment process. A lot of employers kind of bemoan the fact that young people don't have the appropriate soft skills. And we certainly understand that certain disabilities impact soft skills differently. And it's a challenge for some young people to get those soft skills. But we know that families can play a role in helping youth acquire those skills. So it's important, you know, a lot of times we refer to them in old school as just regular manners. You know, how do you conduct yourself? How do you maintain your appearance? How do you interact with adults and customers? These are important things that employers really want. I have heard some people say that they don't believe soft skills are as important for youth with disabilities, and I would really beg to differ. I think that soft skills are important not only in employment, but in general social functioning, that to the greatest extent possible that we can help young people with all types of disabilities gain strong interpersonal skills. I think really they're going to find their success rate in employment and social situations to really be elevated. So I'm a strong believer in soft skills. And I'm a strong believer that parents play a role in building these soft skills. If you look back at your own childhood, Think about the expectations that your parents or the adults in your life placed on your behavior. Were you expected to dress a certain way when you went to certain events? Were you expected to speak to adults in a certain manner? Were you expected to do chores at a certain time in your house? All of these things are soft skills. So these things can be practiced in the home by families. I think this is one of the most effective ways to engage families in preparing youth with disabilities for employment, is to use activities in the home to build soft skills. Taking work direction, maintaining a neat and clean appearance, working as part of a team, showing initiative, time management. This is just a few of those skills, but I encourage something that they help build in the home through expectations and everyday activities like chores and family outings and so on and so forth. I often say that families are the first, best, and most effective case manager that a person with a disability will ever have. Families find themselves oftentimes in the role of having to access employment services and disability services for their son or daughter. And that role tends not to change. It tends to stay constant through adulthood. So the professionals that work with families can help them understand that it really a family role is to make connections to the adult supports that a young person may need. Not every youth with a disability is going to need all of the supports, but it is important that families have the information that they need to know what supports. Is it VR? Is it county services? Is it workforce services? Is it additional training? And that they know who to call and how to access those supports. They often don't know where to begin, so it's important that they're given that information by the professionals that are working with them. So VR professionals, education professionals, they can partner with advocacy organizations to help families understand, here are the services that can help, and here's how to access those services. It's also important for families to really have a clear understanding of the role of benefits. Many families still have misconceptions about the impact of Social Security benefits on a person's ability to work. And I continue to hear that families are apprehensive in allowing their young person with a significant disability to work because they're afraid of losing benefits. But what we find in almost every situation, that it pays more money if a young person works rather than if they stay on benefits, because we know Social Security benefits does not pay enough at this particular point for a person to live independently in their community and have any money left over, right? We also have to acknowledge, however, this is not an easy system to navigate, and we need to acknowledge that families are fearful and they just want the best for their son or daughter, and they want things in place. They don't want to take any chances. So we can help families better understand the role of benefits by helping them access resources like certified work incentive counselors and other benefit supports, so they can really make a good decision about the role of benefits and not operate on misconceptions. So in conclusion, families really are a vital partner in the employment success of youth with disabilities. However, they often need coaching how to best fill this role. And it's up to education, voc rehab, community rehab providers, advocacy organizations, and everybody that is out there supporting youth and families to be able to provide that coaching so families can be that effective partner that we are looking for. Here's a list of additional resources that I would encourage you to take a look at. PACER's National Parent Center on Transition and Employment is a wonderful resource for families. The National Transition Technical Assistance Center has got great resources on transition and involving families and assessments. And the National Collaborative on Workforce and Disability for Youth have some really great resources for young people and families and professionals, guides and info briefs that you can use to get some ideas on how to interact better and partner with families. So again, my name is Sean Roy. I am with Transcend and the Rehabilitation Research Training Center on VR practices in youth. Our website is listed here on the bottom, vrpracticesinYouth.org. I really hope that you found this online seminar helpful. We have many more on the website coming. And I hope that in your day-to-day jobs that you consider the positive impact of partnering with families and that you take steps to make sure that they can play a role in employment success for youth with disabilities. I thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to this Rehabilitation Research and Training Center on Vocational Rehabilitation Practices in Youth online seminar. Please follow the provided link to take the quiz. As a reminder, if you score 70% or more above, you will be emailed a certificate of completion. If you score below 70%, you'll have one more additional opportunity to re-watch the seminar and complete the quiz. Thank you.